Hey Homeworthy, I'm Patrick. Welcome to my Flatiron apartment. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, my name is Patrick Janelle, also known as a guy named Patrick on Instagram. I'm the founder of Untitled Secret, and we are in my New York City apartment. So I found this apartment mid-pandemic. This was a time when landlords couldn't get rid of their apartments fast enough. It's very different now. It's very hard to find a great apartment, but in the middle of the pandemic, it was this sweet spot when there was a lot of opportunity to find some great places. So I increased my rent threshold by just a little bit, and then I looked around the city for basically my dream New York City loft. At first I was looking in Soho. Things were still a little too expensive in Soho, so I went a little further afield and I found this beautiful open space, high ceilings right here in Flatiron. So I moved in 2021 and I immediately set to renovating the space to make it the space of my dreams. So I've currently had this living room set up so that my friends can be seated and enjoy while I'm here behind the bar. I do like to change it up every now and then, so I think I'm getting ready for a new shift. But right now, the way that it's set up, we have my Hay sofa, the Mags Low Soft via Design Within Reach. It actually has 3 parts. One of the parts is sitting right here. It's not really supposed to live on its own, but I rearranged the living room and that's what I had to do. I have this low coffee table from Evan Giles, which is just such a beautiful shape. And honestly, I love that it's low because half the time I'm sitting like this, either with friends, enjoying a cocktail, or this is where I work too. I just have my laptop here. So this surface is actually perfect. My Nordic Knots rug, which is very, very comfortable. In general, moving from apartment to apartment and thinking about what do you keep, when do you invest in new pieces? I think you really have to do 2 things. You have to really think about how you want the space to function for you and how you want it to feel, what's the vibe. And you also have to not be too attached to things that you've had in your old apartment. So for instance, I did have a very small version of a wall built in my old apartment, and I knew that I wanted to expand that. So I invested in something new, but a good handful of these things were sort of displayed in my old apartment. I didn't really have room for a coffee table in my old apartment, so this is very new. I'll show you in a little bit in my office space something that did come from my old apartment, which actually is perfect in this new place, and I think is a really good example of when it makes sense to hold on to something. Anybody who walks into this apartment immediately is going to turn and see this beautiful pier mirror, which I found. While it looks like it was built into this apartment and was meant to be here, it's actually a piece that I found. There's a place in Harlem called Demolition Depot that basically will take apart retail spaces and whole townhomes and sell off individual pieces. So I don't know where this originally came from, but I found it at Demolition Depot. And when I was there, I was actually looking at a different mirror that I had seen online. But then I saw this mirror and I was like, oh wait, no, I need to have this. But I looked at it and I was like, it's too tall. There's no way it's gonna fit. I came home, I measured, and would you believe it, but it barely fits and the cornice is sort of coming out so it fits over. I just realized that I have there's an old pine branch sticking out from the holidays that's dead. But yeah, that is just this fits perfectly in the space, and it really is the pièce de résistance here in this apartment, so I love it. When I first saw this apartment, the landlord had actually put up a wall that went right here. So it split this living room into these 2 narrow rooms. So you walk in and you're like, this is kind of an awkward space. But I realized that they were really just a partition wall. And when I moved in, I asked the broker if they could come down. And remember, this is the middle of the pandemic. And the broker was like, oh yeah, we'll have, the landlord will take them down for you. So not only could I take them down, could I make changes, but the landlord also did a few things for me. But the thing that was really important about realizing that is that the ceilings are so tall and they have this beautiful tin relief, these original ceilings from probably 100. They may not actually be original, but they're probably at least 100 years old. The building is older than that. And so with the height of the ceilings, the beautiful tin relief, and then opening up this room, I knew I could sort of like see the vision that this would be kind of like exactly the place that I would love because of the scale and the space, but also the character that it had from all of these details. So one of the most important things that I did when I moved into my apartment was to add more storage, because if you live in New York City, you know storage is at a premium and our spaces are very small. And in order to have a clutter-free home, we need places to store stuff. So this is my utility closet. I try to stay quite organized, nice and labeled. And then over here I have my coat closet. I used to, in my old apartment, I had all of my coats hanging up over my bed because that was the only place for storage. So I have a real closet now. It's really nice. Additional storage up top. So I have things like my suitcases, a few like fun little chairs that I take out to the fire escape, which is my terrace during the summer. So that storage is super nice as well. So one of the other things that I loved about this apartment when I first saw it is that I have outdoor space, which is essentially my fire escape, but a pretty good sized fire escape. I'm not supposed to have pots out there. Shh, don't tell anybody. But it's not like a window that I have to climb through. It's like a full door that I can step out and enjoy the beautiful New York day and, you know, have my coffee out here. When it's warm in the summer, have a cocktail out here. This is a really like special little spot, iconic New York. So this space is definitely represents a combination of like work and life. When I first found this apartment, I really wanted it to be a home for my team that worked with me as an agency. We've always been remote, but I like to have the team together once a week. And so this space functioned as the de facto office for a long time. We've since outgrown this space, but for a few years, everybody would gather here on Tuesdays. My long dining table was the workspace. I think that's a really good example of the way that I like to sort of have work-life balance. I work hard and my team works hard, but it's also really important to me to sort of enjoy the more moments of hospitality that we can find in our own lives. Now for me, I do work from home most of the time, and the way that I keep things sort of balanced and separate is I have fairly strict work hours. I'm starting every day at 9:30. That's when I'm sort of clocking in. I'm finding my team on Slack, and I end the workday at 5:30. And honestly, the best thing about that is it really gives me permission to enjoy the rest of the time that I have in my home alone, on my own. You know, one of my favorite moments of the day is sitting right here on this sofa, having my coffee or my daily cortado and playing my Wordle, my connections, and I just get to enjoy the home that I've created and not worry about work and really have some personal time. And very similarly, 5:30, I clock out and then I can, you know, enjoy a cocktail here in my living room. I can make myself a drink. So this bicycle belonged to my father. He bought it in 1973 and I had it refinished. I used to ride this bike around Los Angeles. I moved to Germany. I lived in Frankfurt for a few years. I rode it there, and then it was the one thing that I brought with me to New York City when I moved from Frankfurt to New York, a suitcase full of clothing and my bicycle. So this is a very special piece to me, and more recently I had it refurbished back to its original condition. So it mostly sits here as artwork, but every once in a while I like to take it out around town. So we have this exposed brick wall, which is very New York City, and a working fireplace, which was also something that was important to me when I first found this apartment. And I've been using this winter has been so cold, so it's been perfect to have a cozy fireplace. I've thought so many times about whether I keep the brick as it is. It's like so classic and iconic New York. Do I paint over it? Do I do like a whitewash? And I think there's going to be iterations, it's gonna change. But for the first few years living here, I wanted to keep it sort of this, you know, iconic New York brick. I also in general like not adding artwork to it. I feel like the brick is already doing a lot, so I don't think that it really needs anything else. The last tenant definitely had like a TV here. I'm not a TV person. I don't want that thing as the center of my living room. I just watch stuff on my laptop. So no TV, also no artwork. That doesn't feel like the right thing. But like my apartment in general, it's all a work in progress. It's all gonna change. So I don't know, come back in a year and I'll see if things have changed. So this piece, I really bought this little console table because I wanted a place to kind of like house the wood for the wood burning fireplace that would sort of contain it. So this kind of acts as that perfect like open space, but also enclosed. It's a modern console from, I believe, Lulu in Georgia. And then it's also a perfect place for my record player, for my speaker, for my, keys and wallet when I come home. I am not like a huge vinyl nerd, but I do love when I'm really wanting to kind of like set the mood for myself or for some guests, putting on some vinyl. So I have a few good like mix records. This one's from Kitsune, Maison Kitsune. I have a few like vintage, of course. I have like Fleetwood Mac Rumors, of course, some classics. So every once in a while I'll put on the record. Lots of artwork throughout the house, or a good bit, and most of the artwork has a story because the work that I'm connected to, I usually buy it when I'm first experiencing it and it's in a particular moment or occasion. So this piece is actually from Brazil, from Rio de Janeiro. There's a shop there that sells sort of like indigenous prints that typically the indigenous prints would be on people's bodies in those indigenous communities. But this shop also hires those people to then create those same prints on textiles. And I just thought it was a beautiful block print. And it also reminds me of my time visiting Brazil. So I had it framed and it's sitting here. So I've traveled a lot, and New York is definitely home for me, but it's a really good home base to kind of explore other places. The thing about traveling, I don't necessarily love the term like global citizen, but I do love the idea of feeling comfortable wherever I go and kind of slipping into a new place sort of as if I'm a local. Like I would rather take that approach than maybe, kind of like checking off all of the like must-see, must-do tourist spots. So what I like to do is I find, like one bar or one coffee shop that I know is like a notable, reputable, like good spot that does like quality stuff. Start there, maybe have a conversation with the barista or the bartender, allow those recommendations that they have to kind of take me on my journey through the city as like the starting point, and really just kind of live in a place for, a week or so, because I think that I really enjoy traveling, but I really want to know what it feels like to like truly inhabit a place and live there. And so I'm lucky to have been able to do that in a lot of different places, but I always love coming back to New York, which is my true home. So when you first walk into the apartment, you're greeted by my long dining table. The layout of the apartment in general is sort of long and narrow, but having the table when you first walk in is really the best use of that space, because it really is this kind of like long, it really just like fits the table perfectly. So you walk in, you see the table. To the left side, you see the living room, which I'm sitting in now. A couple of big, beautiful windows that frame the living room, that flank the mirror that I found, the pier, and brought into the apartment. I have a working fireplace, which keeps this living room very cozy. Opposite the fireplace, I have my whole back bar, which houses I don't know how many hundreds of bottles, and also my actual bar where I will make cocktails. So you have the living room, and then you have the long kind of narrow dining room, which makes its way into the kitchen. This is also kind of a pass-through space, so I've had to sort of set it up where the counter and all the appliances are on one side and the storage is on the other side. And what's really nice about this is it does kind of like maintain this sort of like fluid open space. If I'm entertaining or I'm cooking, it is easy for me to still kind of like engage with my guest as I'm cooking. Then going through the kitchen on the far side, you'll see what is really kind of like my office space. I installed these large glass and steel doors. I had my friend Ryan Kent from Kent Steel Co. manufacture them. Really the important aspect of the reason that I did that is because I have windows on the far side of the apartment as well. And by having those, that glass barrier, I can still close the doors for privacy or to take a call when I'm working, but also still let light through. And it adds this like really beautiful architectural detail to the apartment. So that's kind of like the length of the apartment. And once you go back towards the office, you take a right and there's a small hallway. Off to one side is my bedroom that is completely open. I don't have doors enclosing the bedroom. I live alone and I like this sort of like open loft kind of vibe, while still having a bit of a kind of like nook for coziness, kind of like personal time in my bedroom. And then opposite the bedroom is the washer and dryer. Anybody that lives in New York City knows that you really made it when you have a washer and dryer in your apartment. And then I have a bathroom that I've redone as well. So this is the dining room slash former office. This is where my employees used to come and sit and work. And like I've said before, this is a very long, narrow area. It kind of doesn't work for anything but this long table. And I found the perfect table for this space because it's a little narrower than your typical table and it's quite long. I think it's 12 feet long. I found this table after searching high and low across the country. I took a road trip. I was going to antique stores around the country looking for a few different things, including a table like this, and I didn't find it. And then I came back to New York City. I was walking about 5 blocks from here in Chelsea, and there was like this garage door that was open into this space, and it was an antique store that no longer exists. And this table was sitting there on sale, and it fits the space just perfectly. So a couple weeks later, when my brother was visiting, I made him carry it through the streets, up the stairwell, and into the building. And as you can see, I kind of like this very like eclectic seating situation. So we have a bench on one side that I found on Facebook Marketplace. I have these classic chairs from Design Within Reach, and it creates this sort of, you know, I think like nice mismatched idiosyncratic vibe, which is just very much me. And I kind of like this idea of it feeling a little bit like a library table, which is why I have these Anne Tradition portable LED lamps. And, you know, I like to have some objets, some books, have it kind of styled out. And then, you know, obviously, so this is like great for working. And then if I have a dinner party here, I can obviously, you know, replace the lamps with candles, add some florals, and have just like a really beautiful kind of like that quintessential long dining table. So this is, honestly, this could be kind of like the worst part of the apartment, but the way that this table works makes it just like such a welcoming spot to kind of walk into. And then along the wall, I have some brass sconces from Peter Dolkus, and I have these fake candles. They're burning real flame, but they're actually like kerosene candles, so I can refill them and then they never drip. My friend Holly in Tennessee gifted them to me as a welcome gift to my new home. I have some artwork here. Again, some story behind the artwork. I found these pieces. I was actually in Jackson Hole. There's a woman who has a vintage furniture store there, and she had some artwork on the walls that I was really interested in, these pieces and a few others. She said, oh, if you're interested, I have like a whole case of these line drawings if you want to see if there's any that you like particularly well. And I was like, why, where did you find these? And they were her grandmother's. Her grandmother actually lived in New York City, was German and Jewish, and happened to essentially escape the war because she was traveling abroad in New York when like things broke out in Germany. And so lived her life in exile here in New York City and went to drawing classes and made all these. So I brought them back to New York City and have them displayed here on my wall, and I think they're really, really lovely. And on the other side, I have 2 pieces from different people. A friend of mine that I know from Instagram, who's a photographer, and then my friend Brian Casper, who is a lettering artist, did this poster. He like created the lettering, and kind of a long story, but like basically like painted this demolition derby car that then was totaled, but this poster is sort of like commemorating it. And I obviously love his work, and I love these 2 pieces together. So also some great pieces to frame the dining room. So the paint throughout most of the apartment is a color called skimmed milk white from Farrow & Ball. It's a neutral and very light, but it's not white, and it has just a slight kind of green tint to it. As you kind of come back into the apartment, away from like the sun in the front room, the color starts to, I think, kind of like enhance the mood. So it's not just super stark. And one thing about the color specialists that I worked with at Farrow & Ball, they talked about when I chose this color is having a little bit of that color, especially as it reflects the sort of like buildings across the street, adds just a little bit more warmth, even though it's green, adds a little bit more warmth and kind of like texture to the space. And I think you really feel that as you continue kind of moving back into the apartment. My personal design style is very idiosyncratic. It's very, maybe a little quirky. I really just am drawn to certain pieces, and I like the ability to sort of bring all of those things together without maybe a master design plan and make them work. And So you'll see throughout my apartment that there'll be things that I've sort of like collected over the years, whether that's artwork or an objet or piece of furniture, and really kind of like bringing that together, I think creates a little bit of this balance between sort of like modern and traditional style. You'll find me kind of like right in the middle. My background in terms of my education is graphic design. So I was a graphic designer freelance for a decade before I moved to New York City. And once I moved to New York City, I joined Instagram, and I became known for my Instagram following. I grew a strong audience there. And so I became a full-time content creator for, well, it's been a decade now. Halfway through that journey, I realized there was an opportunity to create an agency for other creators in a way that really didn't exist. Untitled Secret, which I founded in 2020, I like to say is an agency for creators by creators. I created a space and a management style which is very hands-on, very relationship-driven, and is really about working with people that we truly believe in and making sure that the talent roster that we have is small so that each manager on my team is really able to give best-in-class, white-glove 360 service to all of the talent that we represent. In addition to the talent management agency Untitled Secret, we have a sister agency called Untitled Social, in which we manage social media accounts for brands, do content creation, influencer marketing. So my whole world is now very much in the social media and digital space, whether that's the content that I create for myself on my Instagram account, a guy named Patrick, or whether that's managing talent through Untitled Secret or creating content for brands through Untitled Social. Recently, I've been very happy to have received some accolades. Business Insider recognized Untitled Secret as one of the top 10 social media influencer agencies. The PR Net recently recognized us as the best emerging talent management agency as well. And really, I'm very grateful for that recognition, but it all is because I have an incredible team who do really great work. All right, so moving into the kitchen, this was a gut reno. This was the one thing in the apartment when I moved in between this and the bathroom where I was like, this has gotta go if I'm going to enjoy this apartment. And fortunately, my landlord was willing to work with me on doing it. I mean, I paid for it, but he let me. So what we decided to do, it's actually still a fairly narrow space. So there was this massive island here before that I got rid of. It was just too big. It was totally impractical. So clearing out this space and having kind of like all of my like cooking area, appliances, prep space over here, and then across on the other side having all of my storage. So I have everything, all of the cabinetry and all of the faces for the appliances are from Reform, Copenhagen. And this is the basis line, as you can tell by this sort of like opening here for the handhold. I really like the kind of minimal, no hardware look, especially because it's dark. I kind of like that it offers a kind of counterpoint to kind of like everything else that's going on in the apartment that's like kind of much lighter. This marble from Bass Stone Yard, B-A-S Stone Yard in Long Island City, a female-owned marble yard, which is like just so beautiful. And it was really fun to work with the installation team on kind of like exactly which piece of the marble I wanted to kind of highlight, because you can see there's this like really dark veining right here, but you don't necessarily get that everywhere. So we cut out the area for the stovetop where there just like wasn't as much kind of visual interest. So like that was a really fun thing to do. The brass rail from Duval Kitchen, I believe. And I mean, this is so useful and functional. These are actually like the pans that I use every day. So having them right here at my fingertips, having the shelf for all of my salt, olive oil while I'm cooking. It just makes for like a super convenient kind of setup in like a relatively small space. I have appliances from Jen Air. Induction stovetop, I just have to mention because this is like the bougiest part of me. I buy my dish soap and my all-purpose cleaner at Diptyque. I love this stuff and I don't care that it's expensive. If I'm gonna have to wash the dishes, I wanna feel good doing it and I wanna smell delightful things while I'm doing it. So Diptyque is where it's at. The artwork in the kitchen, this is another really great story. Well, this I painted in college. This was the sort of like color study thing in like painting one. And it's just like really lovely and it's a pair perfect for the kitchen. And this painting I found, so I was living in Germany with my ex And I found this painting at like a thrift store, and kind of an antique, kind of a thrift store in Frankfurt. And I went home and I told my ex, I was like, I really, really love this painting. And I took him back to see it, and he was like, it's like ripped up. It's torn. And he was like, why do you like this? He was not a fan. Cut to like a month or two later for my birthday, he had actually bought it and had it for me in our home. He still didn't like it, but he was nice enough to give it to me. I love this painting. I think it's so beautiful. I love the colors. I love the suggestion of the human figures. It also, I don't really know where it came from or who the artist is. So for me, I've spent a lot of time sort of like imagining stories about like who this person is. And it's traveled with me from Germany all the way to New York. I had it shipped over after I left, and through different apartments. And I think it's just so perfect as a centerpiece to my kitchen. So we have our little breakfast table that I got at Crate & Barrel. One of the things I love about the storage, well, one, it's just a lot of storage, so I can have all of my, dinner party ware, all of my dishes. But I also have what I call my little appliance garage, my appliance cabinet. Anybody who knows me on social media knows that I love my coffee. It is very important to me. So I have my Breville machine here that I can make my daily cortado. I can make my coffee at any time fresh. And it's just really nice having a space where I can like hide these things away, but also one where like I literally use this here. It's not like I need to kind of like pull it out to use it. So this was, I think, like probably this was like the best epiphany about putting the kitchen together, was adding this little space here. A great content creator is somebody who has a specific point of view and is willing to kind of go the extra mile to share that perspective. And the reason I say go the extra mile is because it's a lot of work. And I think many people recognize that, but sometimes it can be really hard to sort of see behind the lens and realize the amount of time that somebody takes to either come up with a concept or just film and choose sort of like the best version, or, and many of us are kind of constantly living our lives online as well. But all of that work is only going to be valuable if you have a really strong perspective and point of view. For some people, that's very much an aesthetic point of view. For some people, that has to do with sort of like humor and comedy. And for some people, that just has to do with like really strong opinions. And I think, the best content creators are those who, regardless of where your point of view comes into play, you're willing to sort of put it out there, put it in front of the audience, and work hard to create the content that showcases that. Coming back this way, we are in my conference room. I do use this for work. I take a lot of calls here, but it's also a great place for a small dinner party as well. You can close the glass doors, it's all enclosed, or you can keep it open. So this is the table that I mentioned earlier that came from my last apartment. And just to give you a sense of scale in terms of this apartment that I'm in now and my last apartment, this table basically took up half of my apartment. Acted as both this sort of like kitchen counter table, our dining table, and then kind of like a bar space. And then I basically had a small little living room next to it. This table was created by Kent Steel Co., my friend Ryan Kent, a custom table, brass and marble, but it fits perfectly in this room. And so I was so happy that I was able to bring it with me because it's just such a like favorite piece of mine. Similarly, the chandelier, which was a sort of early piece by Apparatus. This also hung in my old apartment, and I was able to bring it here, and it just fits perfectly in here. I have some stools from Design Within Reach. Probably the thing with the most visual interest in here is this wallpaper, which I really love it because people usually take it like, they have like a second take with it. You don't notice at first that it's ombre, but it starts very light at top and then it goes down into this like dark blue green. This is from Calico Wallpaper. They do these really kind of like great large scale, wallpaper designs. And I love how subtle it is, and yet how it kind of like adds this strong visual interest. Now, this is maybe a weird thing to get like super excited about, but this is a mill, and if you haven't heard about it, it's basically like a food recycler, similar to composting. You put all of your food scraps in here and it basically incinerates them, and you can then add them to compost. So I can keep filling this up for like a month with all my food scraps. It cuts down on my garbage, and it feels really great to be able to compost things. And it's like actually a pretty good looking machine. So for those of you who are environmentally conscious and thoughtful with waste, the mill is the way to go. So these steel doors, steel and glass doors, also made by Kent Steel Co., add such a wonderful architectural point of interest here in the apartment. This used to be just a partition wall, and it blocked out all of the light from these windows. So adding these glass doors really just sort of like opened up this space. Again, architectural interests. I can also, they're, you know, functional. I can close the doors, have a little privacy in here. This was one of the early decisions I made about this apartment, and I'm so happy that I did. So in the back of the apartment, back through this small hallway, we have the bathroom and the bedroom, and on the far wall is my fragrance cabinet, which this little shallow cabinet was sort of like one of the best things that I ever found at an antique store. I already had a few fragrances, not quite this many, and I knew that I needed a different way to house them than just putting them on a shelf. So when I found this cabinet that is just the perfect depth to fit my fragrance bottles, and it also just fits perfectly here in the hallway, it was just meant to be. So this is my fragrance collection. I probably have a few favorites. Let's see which ones I'll point out. So this is Frederic Malle Portrait of a Lady. If you know, you know. Very rose heavy, very elegant, so gorgeous. Let's see, what's another one? So that's a favorite one. I love, for something totally different, I love Tom Ford Black Orchid. I mean, anything Tom Ford is great, but this one is like super like deep dark floral, which is not usually my vibe, but this one is so sexy. Also, if you know, you know, The Maker, they have a handful of fragrances. This one's Stag. It kind of has this like in the woods, slightly, I feel like it's giving me kind of like outdoor, in the woods, pine, a really masculine scent without being like too much. I actually have been to very few like jazz clubs in the city. I'm going with my hairstylist, Jay. He's a big like jazz head, and we're going to Village Vanguard in a couple of weeks, which is a classic institution. I've never been, so Jay is showing me the way. But plenty of places that I love to go for cocktails. One of my favorite, there are a couple of favorites actually. Well, one, just because the room is so beautiful, is the Swan Room down at the Nine Orchard Hotel. El Tigre in the Lower East Side is a favorite cocktail spot. And also Chez Patrick, my bar in my living room, might be the best speakeasy in the city. I don't know. So like I mentioned before, I have a washer and dryer, which is like, I'm a grown-up New Yorker. I have the washer and dryer in the hallway, and the door functions as both the door to the washer and dryer as well as to the bathroom. So you'll see that when I close the bathroom door, it exposes the washer and dryer, which is very important for space saving and for maximizing the space in a, you know, relatively small New York. Okay, this isn't a small New York apartment, but any New York apartment, it's important to maximize the space. So coming this way, we have the bathroom, which I also did a sort of like gut reno. We have an enclosed glass shower with Toto appliances, Toto sink, a Toto bidet toilet. It's very fancy in here. Sort of my own little spa in the heart of my apartment. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this on camera, but this is a sign that I got made for my 40th birthday. Hotel Chez Patrick, again, my 40th birthday, the theme was my hotel, and I had this made, so I like to turn this on when I have parties at home. Adds like a fun mood to the bathroom. And then sort of like another collection of just sort of like mirrors, and here I have just another collection of things that I've sort of found over time. These beautiful butterflies from Peru I inherited from my ex-boyfriend. I'm not sure if he actually knows that I have them, so hopefully he won't find out. These painted oyster shells that my friend Erica from college painted for me. Some mirrors that I found at antique stores. I really love this idea of like using this kind of this framed mirror, something a little bit different than kind of like I think what you would normally find in a bathroom. It's so hard to find like a good medicine cabinet, and I couldn't have done a recessed medicine cabinet anyway because of the plumbing. So we're just like getting really deep now, like all the details. One thing that is really important to me is that sort of all of my storage also looks beautiful, especially when it's sort of out and about. So like all of my pills I put in these little glass jars. My like Listerine mouthwash I put in a decanter. But I use these all the time, and I'm going to set them out, but I also want them to look beautiful. I found this this is, you know, well, it's maybe not as organized as it should be. This is like from this is like a tool shop drawer, but it just like fit perfectly in here. There's nothing I love more than finding like a basket or a storage thing that just like fits the exact right dimensions that you need. So I'm actually like very proud of my like very utilitarian tool drawer that I use as my bathroom storage. So let's think about what is the lighting, making sure that I'm a big fan of low lighting. So when people come in that the mood is sort of set just so. Obviously the playlist to create the right mood. I mean, if you don't have good music on and your lights are too bright, forget it. Like those are baseline, that's where you need to start. And then from there, you know, what are the other touches that you thought of? Having a glass carafe and glasses for water. Like it's such a small detail, but I think if you can sort of provide those things when people first walk in the door, it really goes a long way. What's your flower situation? I love putting some flowers in the bathroom. It's just like, you know, maybe a small little bouquet. I think that having a well-stocked bar is very important. So you can sort of whip out a classic cocktail anytime. Okay, I went a little overboard with the full stocked bar, but if you at least have one spirit from each category, there are essentially 6 categories, you know, like your tequila, you know, tequila, whiskey, gin, vodka, etc. So you can make a classic cocktail. And one other hosting tip, this is just sort of like a fun one to keep in mind when you have people coming over, have a list, have like things set aside for people to do. Because somebody's always going to ask you, can I help with anything? And of course we all love saying like, no, I got it. But it's actually really nice for the guests to be like, oh yeah, can you plate this charcuterie for me? Something relatively easy, low stakes, but have one task reserved for the person who wants to help. And then coming into the open bedroom, again, built in all of the storage because, you know, I have a lot of clothes and I needed a place for it. So I have closets on both sides and then storage above, which I can access up here. And then coming through into the bedroom, it's a very small space, but I've kind of always been a believer that the bedroom doesn't have to be big. I sleep in here and I spend a lot of time in the rest of my apartment, so maximize the space in the rest of the apartment and just have a cozy little bedroom. I painted it this like sort of weird color. It's called Cooking Apple Green from Farrow and Ball. It's the flat finish, which I love that texture. I don't know, it's a little weird, the green. If nothing was in here, it would feel very like institutional, like I'm in an insane asylum. But adding in some of the texture, the linen, the drapes, and the window shade, I think it actually really works. And I really kind of kitted this out. I did a lot of shopping at CB2 for the lamps and the side tables and some of the linens. Oh, and then, I mean, and it gets very hot in New York, and so I do need an AC unit. So I have one right above the bed. That's really the only place that it can go. But it is a windmill machine that at least like looks nice, and the air kind of blows up so it's not blowing directly kind of like over my face as I sleep. And I think that's it for the bedroom. So my favorite thing about this apartment is that one, it truly is my dream come true. I think growing up in Colorado, I always envisioned myself living in a city somewhere. I don't think I knew that it was New York City, but I knew that I wanted to essentially create a home and a life that I saw in the magazines. And at this point, this is like the late 90s, and that would be like Better Homes and Gardens, or I was a huge fan of Martha Stewart Living. And the fact that I now live in the middle of New York City, I mean, truly the heart of the city, and I have a home that is not a tiny shoebox. I've done that in New York City too. And that represents kind of like my style, like every detail in the apartment represents my style, is just truly a dream come true. But you know what? Actually, the best thing about this apartment is it's a really wonderful place to host and entertain. And again, going back to my days sort of like flipping through the pages of Martha Stewart Living when I was, you know, a teenager, that was a dream. And I'm now able to host parties, host friends, invite people over, and this is just like such a wonderful backdrop and I think hospitable place to do that. So this is my living room / bar. As you can see, my whole back bar behind me, where I've been collecting bottles for a long time and also going through them frequently too. I have it sort of organized by wine, liqueurs. We have our whiskeys, our gins. I have like one bottle of vodka. I don't drink a lot of vodka. And I have bourbon. I have all of my rum and cachaça. I have more rum, and then Amaro. So I do have it organized. I pretty much know where everything is, and I pretty much know everything that I have. So I can whip you up a cocktail whenever you come over. Yeah, I also have a lot of like cocktail recipe books that I've collected over the years. One from Death & Co., this book, and a bottle of rum if you want to know about the history of rum, which is actually very interesting. Recommend it. And I have my large, I think this is called a Nebuchadnezzar, if that's the right name for this size of bottle. One of my favorite producers from France. I bought this from one of my favorite like wine/coffee shops in Cincinnati, Ohio, of all places, Mom and M's. And I'm saving this, I probably need to drink it, but it's literally my favorite producer of Beaujolais in France, and I need to have another dinner party so I can drink that. We have a beautiful lamp by Danny Kaplan, based in Brooklyn. He does these beautiful ceramic objects and lamps. And then a petite record collection for the nights that I want to throw on some vinyl. And of course the bar, which is truly where the magic happens. And I will make you a cocktail in just a little bit. So I'm a gin martini drinker. No shade if you like vodka, but I like my gin. And to make a classic gin martini, we are going to use 2 ounces of gin and 1 ounce of sweet vermouth. Now, I like my London dry gin, which is why I'm using Tanqueray. If you want something a little bit more floral, you can use Hendrick's, of course. Many different options, but today we're doing Hendrick's. So that's it for the ingredients. We're gonna go ahead and fill our mixing glass with ice. Some people prefer their martini shaken, not stirred, a la James Bond, but I like the classic version, the stirred martini. Plus, who doesn't like using a beautiful mixing glass? Okay, so we're gonna give it a few good spins with the bar spoon in the mixing glass. You know, I grew up in a very conservative household. There was no drinking. And so by the time I was 21, I was sort of experimenting for the first time when I was 21 with alcohol. And actually, my very first drink was a dirty martini. So I went from 0 to 60 all at once. No Long Island iced teas for me. That happened later. But since I've, in my adult life, as I've become more and more interested in drinks, it's really about the craft and the artistry of cocktails, as well as any beverage. Any alcoholic beverage, I'm very interested in sort of like the stories behind them. So wine is very exciting to me. The craft of making spirits and cocktail making is also really exciting to me. I have a whole few shelves of glassware. We have like the classic coupe and the classic martini glass. And you know what? It's been a while since I've used one of these, so we're gonna go that direction. Okay, a couple more spins just to make sure it's nice and ice cold. Well, a French 75 is a great party starter because it's champagne, gin, lemon. It's kind of nice and bright and effervescent. It's energetic, and that is a way. But honestly, you can get a party started with a martini as well. Guess it, kind of depends on your mood. I'm a very equal opportunity imbiber. I don't necessarily have a favorite cocktail. It depends on my mood, what I'm feeling any particular day. It could be a margarita, it could be a caipirinha, it could be a Manhattan, it could be a martini. Today, we are feeling a martini. Okay, a little lemon twist. There we go, and cheers. Crisp, clean. That little hint of the lemon when you smell it as you bring it to your lips, so good. The reason I have all of these bottles behind me is I started an app called the Liquor Cabinet. It now functions mostly as a website where you can get cocktail recipes. So I was collecting all these bottles, and in my last apartment, it was tiny. I didn't have room for all of this, so I actually had all these bottles in storage. So I knew moving into this apartment that I wanted to not have storage space, first of all, and I actually wanted to be able to display all of my bottles because they're beautiful. So when I found this apartment and this wall, this empty blank wall was here, I was like, let's do some built-ins, let's build a back bar. I ended up going with these shelves. They're from Lulu in Georgia. I think they're discontinued now. But this allowed me to just have a lot of storage space that also could look beautiful. And then later I found this bar, this sort of vintage bar at a place here in New York called Furnish Green that has like vintage furniture. And I initially used it as it was the sort of like check-in desk for my 40th birthday, which I had here in the apartment. The idea, the vibe, the theme was like, this is my like favorite hotel suite in the city. So this was the hotel check-in desk. And then later after the birthday party, I was like, wait, this bar actually belongs full-time in my apartment. And so it found its way here, and I use it all the time to host friends, large gatherings and small, game nights. We can make drinks while we're still playing games. So let's just say this bar is very utilitarian. It's very important that I have it here in my apartment. You know, to me, home is really the place that you spend the most time probably in your life. I mean, in New York City, maybe not, because people are out and about all the time because it's hard to create a good home. Home is a place that represents you in a way that no other kind of like physical space or object can. To me, home is a place to host and entertain. Home is the place that you've decided is your kind of like place to reset and to truly be yourself. And I guess home could mean a lot of different things for different people, but for me, home is really about the place that I've chosen, the place that I've carved out for myself in this world, that reflects my design intentions, that displays my personality, and is the place that I love retreating to.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.